everyone, it's Lori and welcome to the channel. Today's episode is going to have two parts. First, we're going to talk about how to avoid harsh light in the garden. And then second, I will edit one of the images from my garden photo shoot. So this is a picture of a peony flower shot in really bright light. And you can see right here the harshness of the light around this flower. Now, what I want to do first is give you some tips to avoid harsh light in a situation like this, and then we will go through an edit of one of these flowers. But to get started, let me show you the setup. So this is a picture of the peony plant in my garden. Now this was shot late in the evening after 7 p.m. and you can see the blooms have closed up. So this is a flower that in the early morning and in the early or late afternoon, which are peak photo shooting times, this flower is all closed up. So we're going to need to shoot it during the middle of the day, which it's also in full sun. So we're going to have to deal with harsh light. So what I want to do is show you a few of these images so you can kind of understand the light I was dealing with. And then I'll show you my setup for avoiding that harsh light. So these are some examples. This image, I blocked the light with my body. So sometimes you can do that, especially if you're hand holding or maybe even on a tripod. So you'll notice the harsh light over in the right corner, but I was able to get most of the shadows and reflection off my subject. So that worked pretty well. The next image I'm going to show you, I actually diffused the light entirely so that I could get all the details in a beautiful way. Now this image is going to look a little softer than the others because I did shoot it using a Lens Baby lens. I'll link in the description to Lens Baby if you're not familiar with their lens. This particular lens gives a real soft effect around the flower. But regardless, we're looking at the light and you can see we don't have any harsh reflections or shadows because I was diffusing the light. I'm going to show you that setup in just a minute. Now this is an image where, again, even though I was using a diffuser, I got the flower really focused, but still have some of the light off to the right, which I like. In this next example, you can see some of the light up in the corner, left corner of the image, but I was again able to diffuse the light around my subject, which is so important when you're shooting flowers in the garden. Now, again, the only time of day to capture these beautiful flowers is going to be in the middle of the day. So let me show you the setup that I used. I will give you a link to all of these tools in the description of the video. So this setup includes using a standard light stand that I got off Amazon. This is a clamp tool that is so handy. You can connect it to anything. So in this example, I just connected it to a light stand that I had. You could also connect it to your tripod. You could connect it to your camera bag, something that you have, if you're outside shooting off a deck, you can connect it to anything really. So you'll notice I have a large white diffuser and I'm hanging it so that it blocks the light coming at the flower. Now again, I wanted the flower to not have that harsh light, but I still wanted some light around the subject. And so I continued to work with the diffuser, moving it around my subject to get the light the way I wanted it. I didn't want the flower in complete shade. I wanted some light, but I didn't want those harsh reflections and shadows that you can get. You can see as I move the diffuser away, the light that I was dealing with, very harsh and bright. So using that diffuser made such an impact in being able to capture these beautiful flowers. Now, you could hand hold a diffuser if you have your camera on a tripod, so that can work. I prefer to use the diffuser and then I like to hand hold when I'm out in the garden so that I can really move around my subject and explore it. But you could have this set up. You could also have your camera on a tripod and get the same effect. Now I want to show you a second setup where I used the clamp to hold up the diffuser so that I was really providing shade to the entire scene. Now, if you don't have a diffuser, you can get the same effect using an umbrella. So there are many options to diffuse light in the garden. Next up, I'm going to take one of these images and show you how I edit it. So next up, I thought I would go ahead and edit one of these images that I took while being out in my garden. So I thought I would shoot this one that was, again, shot with the Lens Baby Velvet lens, wide open, which gave this soft look. But what I noticed is the entire image is a little flat. So just want to add a little pop to it and also edit the colors. So to get started, the first thing that I'm going to do is I look at the histogram and I notice I have some room in the whites, which is absolutely going to make an impact. So let's go ahead and spread the histogram and open up those whites. And that is already making such a difference in our image. So I always encourage you to check your histogram. And if it makes sense, try to spread open, especially if maybe it was underexposed a little bit. So next I'm going to reduce the highlights just a tiny bit and open up the shadows just a little bit. That's something pretty standard that I do on most of my images. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to impact the background. The subject is this beautiful flower, and so I want to darken and provide a little dimension to the background. So let's do a background mask. We'll add that mask. It did a good job of masking that. And the first thing I want to do is use the tone curve. I like to go to the midtones, and from there, I'm just going to drag those down, which is going to kind of de-emphasize that background, give it a little depth and dimension. I'm also going to reduce the highlights on the background, and let's reduce the exposure just a tiny bit, like I think it's negative 0.05. All right, so I'm liking that already. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to go back to the basic, and I want to go down to the HSL. I notice in an image like this that's so bright, I want to immediately go ahead and impact the colors. The first thing I want to do is reduce the green saturation. So I'm going to bring that down just a little bit, negative 16. This is a spring flower. I do want the green to look really spring and fresh, but not as saturated as it was. Then for the color of the flower, I'm actually going to use the tool to come over to see what colors are in this flower. So I'm going to drag that tool and we can see it's actually red and of course magenta. So the next thing I'm going to do is work then with my sliders. So I think I want to reduce the red tones just a little bit and come down and reduce the magenta. I just want to soften the colors. So let's look at before and after. I think that looks nice. That's very realistic to what the image was. Now we have a little bit of yellow here, so I could come in and pop the yellow, but that is going to also do it on my background. So we're going to work with the center of this flower in just a minute, and we'll make some adjustments there. Okay, so next, let's go ahead and work on the center of the flower. So I'm going to go back to the mask, add a plus to add a mask. I'm going to use objects. And I like to use the square object tool versus the brush. I really feel like it works accurately and it's nice and quick. So we're going to pop that on and let's zoom in. And Lightroom did a pretty good job. What I'm going to do on the mask is just grab the brush, and I'm just going to brush in this little area to make sure we have all of this center of the flower selected. All right, now what I want to do with the center of this flower is I want to add a little bit of clarity and a little bit of texture. Now I shot this handheld, it was not focus stacked, so I don't expect the center to be perfect. It's not going to be super sharp, but we can enhance it just a little bit. So I'm going to add just a tiny bit of sharpness. I'm also going to go ahead and reduce the noise in the center of this image on the mask and come up. And I want to add just a pop of exposure to this center part of the image. Now, not too much, but just a little bit. So I'm going to probably take that down. Probably usually about 0.25 is going to work nice. All right, so let's zoom out. And what I want to do is look at before and after. Look at the center of the image. And you can see our color tones aren't really that different, even though I modified them. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. I think that looks nice. I'm going to go back to the basics. I'm going to come down and check the screen one more time. Now, if I wanted to enhance the yellow in the flower, I could come over with the mask, create mask. I could do a color range, and I can come in and select that yellow. And it did select think a little bit in the flower. So let's do some refine. Oh, let's do refine. It's up here at the top. And I'm just going to bring that down till I have just the center of the flower. Now I can come down to the saturation and I can make that pop just a little bit more. And I could also even work with the color if I wanted to change the hue a little bit, but I think the hue was just fine. So I'm just saturating it. You could also darken it. If you wanted, you could brighten it. So you've got some options with that color range mask. All right, so I'm going to go back. And again, with this image, I do feel like the green is a little heavy. I'm actually going to do a tone curve on the green channel. And I'm just going to bring it down just a tiny bit. That's another trick to adjusting your color. All right, I think that looks nice. Again, let's look at before and after. So again, we've highlighted the center of the flower. We brought our flower a little bit out, and I think it looks pretty nice. Now, the last thing I thought I would show you today is I really like to take images like this and edit using Topaz Studio 2. The beauty of the program Topaz is we can right-click, edit in, and edit in Topaz. It does work as a plugin with Lightroom or Photoshop. It can also be a standalone editing program. Now, Topaz was created for creative photography, and so it's got lots of tools that we can use to edit our images in a creative way. In the description of this video, I'll include a link that will take you directly to Topaz Studio 2, where you could read about it and purchase it if you wanted to. So this is preparing the file, and what it does is it makes a copy of the file, takes it into Topaz, and then it will bring it back. So we will always have our original image that we edited here in Lightroom, but now we'll have a second copy with the changes that are going to be made here in Topaz. So there's two things that I like to do with an image like this, and I'll show you those. I like to add look, and I'm going to use under my favorites, fur and feathers. Now I'm only going to apply about 20, maybe 20%. You can see what it does is it brings out the detail in the lines of your flowers. Now for the center of this flower, it went a little bit over, but I'm going to go ahead and click apply. Then I'm going to use the mask, grab the brush, and I'm going to take the transparency where it's going to reveal what's underneath, which is my original image. So I'm going to come over and just erase some of this detail that we added. Just want to take some of that off, and I may actually take even more of it off. Let's keep the softness up pretty high, and let's bring this transparency back towards gray. There we go. I just wanted to soften it just a little bit. You can always bring some back if you want to, around maybe those edges. But I definitely didn't want it overdone. So I think that looks much better, and I like that one. So I'm going to close the mask, and again, I'll show you before and after. I really like what it's done to the petals, and it did bring out a little bit of detail. A final step that I like to take is add filter, and I love to use the glow filter under stylistic. So we're going to click on glow. I'm going to take the glow strength up pretty high, and what I like to do here is you can do the coverage. So we can do kind of how much, where it is, and then I like to just reduce the opacity. So I'm going to take that glow down to just a little bit, and you can even turn it on and off to see the effect. So that's without it, and that's with it. It's very subtle when you do that low opacity. It's just softening everything and giving it that nice soft flower look. All right, so now I'm going to click accept. It will take our image back into Lightroom, where we will have the second copy of the image. And what I'm going to do now is show you our reference image. This is the Topaz edit. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. And then I'll bring in the Lightroom only edit, and I'll just let you see the difference. You can kind of compare the petals and the center. So you can just see how it brought out a little bit more detail and gave the petals this kind of painterly look. which I really like. So that is today's edit. I'm going to take some time to work on editing some more of the images from this photo shoot. I love these gorgeous flowers and can't wait to work on some more of these. So take a minute and subscribe to this channel if you're not already. I would love for you to click like and provide me any comments about the video or any videos that you'd like for me to create. I hope you have fun shooting out even in harsh light and that you'll try some of the techniques that I covered in this video. Thanks so much, everybody.